Now, on the basis of wire configuration and how the instruments are connected with my PLC or with my external meter, we have another two types of classification of instruments. And the first one are loop powered instruments, which are also known as two wire instruments. And the other one are retransmission output instruments, four wire or self powered instruments. Okay. Now, these are the terms that you will be listening to very much commonly in the industries, that this transmitter is a loop power transmitter, this transmitter is a retransmission output transmitter. So it will be very embarrassing for you that you don't have an idea what these kind of instruments are. So it is very important to learn about these terms. Now, the loop power transmitters or two-wire transmitters are those kind of transmitters that only uses two wires. Those two wires are turning the instrument on, as well as they are taking the output of the instrument towards a remote location. It means we need to we have two signals. Okay, we have to turn on a digital instrument, so we have to give some electrical power supply. It can be 220-volt AC or 24-volt DC, 12-volt DC, whatever it is. Okay, so we have to give some power, electrical power supply, to turn on the instrument. The instrument will turn on, it will start measuring that physical value, and then we want remote monitoring. So we have to connect my transmitter with my PLC. Okay, so we require two separate pair of wires. But in the case of loop powered instruments, only two wires are used. The same two wires that are powering up the instrument are the same two wires that are taking the output of my instrument to my PLC. Okay, so we have to connect these loop powered instruments in such a way that a closed loop has been formed and my instrument is turning on and transferring my output to the PLC as well. Now, four wire instruments or retransmission or self powered instruments are very simple. Two wires are used for turning on the instrument, and separate two wires are used for taking the output of my instrument towards the remote location where my PLC is installed, so that I can do remote monitoring with the help of that. Okay, so these are the two types of my instruments used. Now, let's say this is a differential pressure transmitter. We will be talking about this transmitter in detail in the upcoming lessons, but it is I will be telling you that it is a loop powered device. One thing that you have to understand is any loop powered device, all the loop powered devices are operated on 24-volt DC. Okay, so whenever you heard that this instrument is a loop powered device, then you would know that it will be taking 24-volt DC as an input. Okay, now this is a loop powered transmitter, and if I directly provide 24-volt DC to this transmitter, as you can see, this is a 24-volt DC power supply. We are giving line and neutral to 20-volt AC to its input, and it is converting that into 24-volt DC. So we have directly connected my power supply, positive and negative, to my instrument, and you can see that it has turned on. But it will be turned on the field. It will not be giving my output to the PLC, which is installed inside the control room. I have to do remote monitoring in this part, right? That is why I have installed a transmitter over here. Otherwise, if I just want to look at the pressure on the field, I could have installed a pressure gauge over there. It would be very inexpensive. Okay, so I have to do remote monitoring. So now, in order to do that, I will have to connect my transmitter with my PLC and my power supply in such a way that only two wires are used that are turning on my instrument, and they're also taking out the instrument signal output signal from the instrument, and they are moving it towards the PLC, so that I can do remote monitoring. Okay, so now how will we do that? It's very simple connection. Let's say this is a transmitter that is installed in the field, and it is measuring pressure of some point, and you want to look at this look at the output of this transmitter inside the control room over the PLC, and this is your PLC. Okay, this is the PLC that is connected to your computer or the HMI screen, and this is installed inside the control room. You want to view the output of this transmitter on this HMI. What you will do is that you will use a 24-volt DC power supply. For loop powered instruments, you will always require a 24-volt DC power supply. Okay, now these are the connectors of my analog input card of my PLC, where I will be connecting my transmitter. Okay, whenever we are connecting any analog signal, either analog input or analog output at the PLC side, we are always using fuses. So whenever I'm doing any kind of maintenance or troubleshooting at the instrument side, and by mistake my wires got shorted or anything happens, so it will not damage my PLC card. What will happen is that the fuse will blown out and my PLC card will be saved. Now, how to connect this instrument such that it is also turned on as well as it is transferring its output to the PLC. So it's very simple. Consider the main object as this power supply. Okay. Now what will happen? The positive of power supply 24-volt DC is directly connected to the positive of my transmitter. Negative of my power supply is connected to the negative of my PLC. Okay. So that is why I told you to, just make the power supply the center. Positive of power supply to the positive of transmitter, negative of power supply to the negative of my PLC. Now there is only one connection left, and that is negative of my transmitter to the positive of my PLC. Now when you will do it, what will happen is that you can see that there is a completely closed loop have been formed between the PLC, transmitter and the power supply. That is why these instruments are called loop powered instruments. I can give this transmitter 24-volt DC directly to the instrument as well, but it will just get turned on and it will be reading the value only on the field. But in order to connect and view the output of that instrument on the HMI, I have to connect it with my PLC in such a way that this closed loop has been formed. Once I have connected it in this way, my transmitter will turn on and it will be transferring its output on the HMI as well. So these are the loop powered transmitters or loop powered instruments. Okay. So you just have to I will be showing you, this is the block diagram of this loop powered or 2-wire instrument, how you are connecting this transmitter to your power supply through your power supply to the PLC. It is very simple. Just make this power supply as the center. Positive of power supply to positive of transmitter, negative of power supply to negative of my PLC. Only one connection is left, and that is negative of your transmitter to the positive of your PLC. So this is how you are connecting your loop powered transmitters. Now we have another topic, that is retransmission or 4-wire instrument or self-powered instrument, and they are very simple. Okay, they have 4 different points on the transmitter, 2 points for the power and 2 points for the output signal. So you will be providing it to 220 volt AC or to 224 volt DC or whatever the input value you will provide this electrical supply to that instrument, and that instrument will turn on. Okay, it will be turning on. Let's say it is a flow meter. It is a retransmission output flow meter. So you will provide it electrical supply, and as soon as you do it, your transmitter will turn on and it will be reading the flow. Okay, and it will be showing that flow on its screen as well. Okay, but if I want to look at its output inside the control room, then I have to use another 2 wires of the output signal, and I have to connect those wires directly to the PLC. In this scenario, no power supply is involved. We are using 4 different wires, 2 wires for electrical input supply to turn the transmitter on, and 2 separate wires to take the output of my transmitter to the PLC. Now, let's say this is your flow meter and it is a retransmission output flow meter or a 4-wire flow meter. These are the 2 wires that are turning on the transmitter on the field. Okay, these are carrying, let's say, 220 volt AC. Your transmitter will be turned on the screen on the field, but I have to connect this with my PLC so I can view the output of this flow meter on my HMI screen. So let's say this is your HMI inside the control room, and these are the connectors with the fuses. What do you have to do? You just have to connect these 2 wires directly to the PLC. Okay, so once you will do, your transmitter will be on the field as well, and it will be transmitting its value on the HMI as well. So in this way, we are connecting retransmission output instruments. And I have already told you that there is another way which is completely different. And in this way, we are connecting the loop powered instruments.